Welcome to Lead Poison.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Lead Poison podcast, brought to you by youcanpaint.com.au. Please head to youcanpaint.com.au for issue 1 of their how-to series, How to Paint Your House and Save Thousands. My name is Jack, your host, and this evening on the show we are joined by Ben Morton. Ben is the manager for Montana Colors Australia, otherwise known as MTN or Spanish Montana. He and his team, operating out of Marrickville in Sydney's inner west, oversee the wide range of working components needed to successfully run an international spray paint manufacturing business. With an obvious gift for succinct communication, Ben clearly has a passion for graffiti and a professionalism one would only expect from a manager inside one of the most well-known and respected spray paint companies on the market. Interestingly, the history of Montana Colors is not one without controversy. Some of you may already know, but the name Montana is associated with two separate spray paint brands, Montana Colors from Spain and Montana Cans from Germany. The events that took place to give us the two separate companies are somewhat shrouded in mystery. However, it is clear Montana Colors is without question the original, the brainchild of two Spanish graffiti writers, Muki and Cappy. Ben and I briefly discussed the matter, but for a more in-depth look, there is a YouTube video by Hexx, Inkworks, whose channel I've included in the show notes. Regardless, I found it very compelling to hear from a part of the graffiti and art culture not too often explored. Thank you for listening, and if you'd like to connect with the show, please email me at theleadpoisonpodcast@gmail.com. Anyways, enough dribble from me. Please welcome Ben Morton.
My name's Ben and I am from Montana Colors Australia, also known as MTN, and I'm currently the manager for the branch of Australia.
How did you come to be a part of the Montana team, and I guess more importantly, feel the important role of managing, the country on a whole? You look very young. How did that come about?
I am. It's been a interesting, mix of different components of my life, which has led me to be here. Ultimately, it's just a blessing from God, effectively, to put me in this position. But I did used to work for the previous distributor prior to MTN being a subsidiary of headquarters. So that's where sort of the initial connection to, this current operation is. But I've been involved in graffiti since I was, 9. So, the culture and just art and whatnot has been a part of my lifestyle. So that led me to work with the previous distributor, and unfortunately that operation closed down for various reasons, and headquarters they decided to reinvest in the Australian market, which was a good idea. Otherwise, the Australian people would be bone dry from all the good stuff. So and when the upper management and directors from headquarters over in Spain decided to reach out. They had me on the contact list because of the previous, association with working with MTN before. So, and they got me on board, and we had a small team to start with, and effectively just transition into the role that I'm in now. So.
Nice. A good turn of events, I guess.
Yeah.
How big is the team that you're looking after, or the team that you've got over there in Marrickville?
It's a question that I like to ask a lot. Well, not a lot, but like if somebody ever asks what size team we have, I'm curious to what the other person tries to guess. So what would you guess?
I actually know. I'm pretty sure I know. But if I had to guess before I knew, I would say between 20 and 30 people. But I think it's a little bit smaller than that. Am I right?
Well, yeah, we've currently got four
people.
I mean, yeah, that's excluding directors and whatnot, but in terms of, feet on the ground, it's four, which is a nice, humble team.
Impressive. Yeah. I mean, to deal with such a big brand and such a large distribution sort of area, to get that done with a core group of 4 people is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's good. So,
do you find that, well, I mean, you probably know, but do a lot of the people working with you and other people that you're coming into contact with have a history in the art space, specifically in graffiti?
I mean, in terms of our current staff, it's 50-50 in terms of whether or not they're associated with graffiti. So, Bernard and myself, Bernard is managing our marketing and socials. He's still over in Spain. But, both of us are involved in graffiti, and Nancy and Jay, like, they're not from a graffiti background. So, whether you are or not, it doesn't matter. But, traditionally and ideally, the people running the show and at least engaging with the community should have some sort of history in graffiti and at least a deeper understanding of the culture and the brand. So
you think it plays a beneficial role to come from that world? I mean, I assume it probably works having people that aren't and people that are to sort of bind together to get different viewpoints. But it sounds like for you and for Bernard, it's sort of beneficial to come from the graffiti world. I mean, it only makes sense that it would.
Yeah. I mean, the company as a whole is a mix of people who are involved and who are not involved. But regardless, all those people are still involved with the brand. And if anything, the people who traditionally haven't grown up with, the world of art or graffiti are most likely going to become addicted while you work here. So
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So how do you go about, you just mentioned sort of engaging with the community, and I imagine that Montana puts a bit of effort into, aside from having a history in the art world and the graffiti world, sort of staying connected, sort of boots on the ground with your market, being, graffiti artists or fine artists or people that are using spray paint, I guess. Do you guys, is there anything aside from social media that you do that keeps that connection strong?
Look, I mean, at the moment, it's a mixture of just direct contact with artists, and if it's not directly to the artists, it's an understanding of how the retailers engage with their customer base, alongside the social media. I guess, the direct contact with the people is probably the biggest thing at the moment. More so for Australia, we don't have as strong, online presence in terms of influence and hype, compared to what Europe and the US has. So, that's something we're growing. And I guess the next stage of how we execute that's going to be quite exciting. So we've got a few things in the pipeline to, increase that engagement and, create a more, well, I wouldn't say welcoming, because I would say it's already welcoming, but a more exciting culture of MTN. But yeah, to put it simply, I guess just direct contact and just the personal relation to artist is, you know, what's the main part.
It sounds like, and I'm completely guessing, but it sounds like you've got formal training in some sort of business. I assume that you've done some business training in your past. Is that right?
As in like going to TAFE or university?
Yeah, either or.
Neither.
Neither.
I mean, I guess like a lot of, I mean, not that I'm comparing myself to these people, but like the saying goes, you know, a lot of the CEOs and leaders of large companies around the world, half of them haven't even you know, gone to the education facilities. But majority of my understanding of businesses come from just simply working in industries and understanding the faults of, you know, other people, and then understanding what the right way to do things is. And plus, I've got a handful of mentors who are, you know, heavily knowledgeable about business and operations and whatnot. So I draw from them a lot as well. And, you know, once you've got the snowball rolling, it's quite easy to absorb, you know, new information. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, man. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that at all. So one of my questions that I want to ask you was sort of if the spray paint business on the business side of things looks different from you know, regular businesses or other businesses, because I guess your clientele I mean, I may be wrong, but it seems like it would be an unusual clientele, you know, traditionally speaking, being that graffiti is quite unusual itself. And it's, you know, it's a pretty wild art form, and a lot of people getting involved might be, you know, different to your regular people. And again, that's just my sort of opinion, but I wanted to know if you noticed that from behind the scenes, did it look different from other businesses? But it sounds like, you know, you've been involved in the spray paint business for quite some time, and maybe you wouldn't be able to tell the difference this far along.
Well, I mean, I guess in comparison to other businesses that I've got an understanding of, I mean, if anything, if we were to simply compare it to just, you know, wholesale and distribution businesses, I mean, the principle's the same in the sense that you know, apply good customer service with retaining good stock levels and implementing procedures and strategies that benefit the retailer rather than, you know, sucking them dry and, you know, getting all the customers to buy directly from you. You know, if you can build a strong network and effectively distribute without, you know, pissing off your retailers, then, you know, the business model for a spray paint company isn't that different to other businesses. But I guess the interesting thing about our industry is that it's, you know, partly illegal. Not that the industry is illegal, but there's, you know, graffiti is both legal and illegal. So I guess that's where the fun comes into it. Not in the sense that we're promoting it.
You have to work your way around that.
Yeah,
that
there is a different workaround to, for, you know, for example, like a tech company just selling laptops or some shit. I guess there wouldn't be as much to worry about in that compared to product that's used for other purposes.
For sure. Yeah, understood. Graffiti itself, you know, fluctuates. Even in my lifetime, I've seen it fluctuate in popularity. Does that fluctuation translate to your desk? Do you see that fluctuation in the market as graffiti sort of gets popular and unpopular over the years? I know there's been some years where it hasn't been as popular. Do you notice anything like that directly from the culture to your table?
I mean, probably not as broad as that, more so specific changes in, you know, the culture and environment and how people are engaging with the landscape, in the sense that, for example, you know, if the government ends up dumping a whole bunch of trains in a yard in a particular state, then, you know, we can see a a spike in certain products on the basis of painting those trains. Or, I guess in the case of, the most recent lockdowns, we can see a change in the sense that people actually can't physically go paint. But I guess in terms of, how it fluctuates in popularity, if anything, I would say that it's been a continuous growth in the sense that just like any other art form, you've got your initial stages of controversy because it's different to the existing or traditional art forms. And until it normalizes, which is what graffiti and street art is becoming now, it's becoming normal, the customer base becomes more dynamic because more people are buying into it.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, it's just, I guess, more of a natural growth up rather than these random fluctuations.
Interesting. That's good news, I guess. Are you finding that because graffiti is sort of becoming more acceptable to the general public, are you getting more interest from people that might be doing like DIY? I know you've got some DIY products and water-based products. Are they, first of all, how long have they sort of been in the works and on the market, and how popular are they?
We've had various more tailored DIY products for varying amounts of time, and we continue to release new, what we call our pro range. We continue to release more products of that nature. But, if we were to take it back, like spray paint, I guess originally was not made for graffiti. What MTN did was made spray paint, or at least in our case, we made a spray paint tailored and designed for graffiti. So I guess spray paint has always been, in its natural form, designed to what we could call be in use of DIY or professional tradesmen and whatnot. But I guess now the thing we want to execute in terms of all this pro range stuff is to, influence and inspire the market that traditionally sees spray paint as a, piece of crap tin you get from Bunnings, and all you can paint is a, your bloody colour-bond fence or some shit, and actually be a lot more dynamic in how you can restore things and fix things and just completely, build a new project. So I don't know if that explained it, but
No, for sure. Yeah, no, you did. Do you think the graffiti market will make up the bulk of your clientele, in years to come, or is there a shift? Do you expect a shift in the future?
Currently, the graffiti and street art market is, yes, the bulk of our turnover. And naturally it would be, because that's where our brand's history is from. And in terms of how the graffiti and street artists use our product, they're using a lot more products for one project than somebody would to use, to paint a chair. But I guess what we want to do is grow each of these target markets that we have together. So I probably, in terms of the DIY market, like at least for Australia, in terms of the distribution network that we have, I think we've only really hit maybe 20%. So we've still got let's say 80% to grow in this market, but over time, ideally graffiti and street art will continue to grow. So both industries and markets will just grow together.
How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your sort of daily life and the business? Has it had a big impact? Aside from, you mentioned that some people weren't able to go paint for a while, but is there anything from an operational point of view that that has changed?
Operationally, nothing's changed, which has been a blessing. The industry that we're in has effectively been, allowed to operate, because if the warehouse and distribution industry stop, then to be honest, the whole of Australia is fucked. So, I mean, this year's been a lot more taxing than last year, just because the freedoms around the recent lockdowns were a lot more strict in terms of what people could do. So, the past 4 months we've been affected, but it hasn't been as drastic as what, other businesses have had to suffer, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately for us, but unfortunately for them. But, operationally, no, nothing's changed. We've still been, Monday to Friday, sending out paint, making sure people have got what they need. So, I mean, we have had production delays and transit delays, obviously, but again, another blessing in the sense that headquarters has been able to retain, I would probably say, a good inventory compared to what other industries have suffered. So overall it's been fine. So,
do you know much about the life cycle of a can of spray paint in terms of, have you seen the manufacturing process and how it all comes about?
I've seen videos.
Yeah. Do you know if there's been much innovation in that sort of space over the past, since the early 90s when the company was developed? I'm sure, even just from my point of view, obviously the paint's better and it's easier to use. Is there leaps and jumps, or is it still traditionally, pressurized paint in a can, and pumped out to the public?
I think it's it's a mixture of both, in the sense that there's smaller jumps in the past and there's some massive jumps in the future. Like smaller jumps would have been, the technology of valves, pressures, and being able to make different pressures for different cans, and on top of that, the vast variety of caps giving us different effects and whatnot, and along with the, ability to, create more colors with the pigments that are available. And I mean, even just the simple fact of bloody having, what's something random we have in a can? Like seal coating paint. To have a waterproof resistant paint in a can that you can just quickly apply. Some of the compounds in cans, it's like, well, we wouldn't have been able to produce this type of thing with a good, quality control 20 years ago. Along to the UV protection colors have now. Different pigments are always going to be worse than others, but, the fact that we can have guarantees on colors coming out of, a spray can without clear coats is cool. So, and for the bigger jumps, that's all confidential at the moment.
Interesting. Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the most popular product range? Is it the 94s, I assume? In my opinion, they're one of the best spray paints, that I can use. I absolutely love them. Do you look across all your products? I know you guys are developing accessories and markers and things like that as well. What do you notice is the most popular, and what has been in recent years?
It's been nearly a 50-50 with 94 and hardcore. So, most likely they're always going to be the popular products. One, because they're our core range, and with the amount of colors that we have, I don't think it's ever going to change. So 94 and hardcore would be the two most popular. And, we could get into the Waterbased and the Pro range. So, the Waterbased is becoming quite popular in the surfboard manufacturing industry.
Okay, interesting.
So, just because the paint itself is EPS safe, so you can actually use it on styrofoam without the paint eating away. So a lot of surfboard manufacturers are blown away because they can effectively decorate and design surfboards with a minimal cost and ease and procedure, and just seal them and send them out. So that's cool.
So I guess the sealing would be the key, because being a water-based paint and spending so much time in water, one of the issues would be deterioration, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, like whenever we say water-based paint, a lot of people think that it's non-permanent paint.
That's what I thought.
But it's
initially.
once set, it's water-based polyurethane to be specific. But once it's set, it's permanent, and it's just got, like, in terms of its durability, it's got as much durability as what the 94 in hardcore.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a permanent paint.
And less toxic, I assume.
Yeah, less toxic, and the VOCs are lower, which is a term for the output of whatever.
Yeah. Volatile something or other compounds.
Yeah, volatile something.
I should know that.
I should know that also.
Yeah. That's all right. Freudian slip, maybe. I tried out the little 6-pack of Waterbased, the mini cans.
Oh, the one.
Yeah, because I'm trying to get my kids into learning how to treat a spray can without spraying yourself in the face. And I thought, perfect. This is great. Because, I mean, as you said, it's not like it's non-toxic, but it is less toxic, which is good when you're dealing with kids and stuff. And they really loved it. And the colors are great too. So yeah, awesome. Tell me a little bit about your sort of a day in the life of Ben Morton. What are you doing every day, or an average day? What kind of tasks are you sort of undertaking?
It's a mixture of, it's a mixture of things in the sense that I've got things that I do every day, and there's also things that I should be doing more often.
Like the rest of us, yeah.
Like, I mean, it's not a major issue, but I guess the benefit and downside of a small operation is that, the management is doing things they theoretically shouldn't be doing. Like, I'm still on the floor in the warehouse helping out, packing orders and whatnot, because we've only got one other warehouse person. So, but aside from that, it's, I guess, a mixture of all the aspects of running a business, in the sense of, sales, outreach into new retailers, responding to the interest of retailers, constructing the prices for the market, and, operational things in terms of warehouse layout and procedures, functions for the team to follow. And I mean, just simply creating vision is probably one of the bigger factors, in the sense that, like, my goal isn't just to simply tick off the to-do list, in the sense that, open up, do this, finish this email. It's greater in the sense that I've got a goal to hit, which is effectively to, make spray paint the house, or make MTN the household name for spray paint. Like, I mean, when you think of window cleaner, you think of Windex. The ultimate goal is to make MTN the same, in the sense that, just to normalize it and just inspire and encourage people to use it. So, creating programs and understanding what we want to do with our retailer network. It's a lot of it's vision. So
beautiful. So it sounds like you've got a little bit of creative control in that space. You mentioned headquarters before, and I know there's some subsidiaries in other countries, MTN, just like there is in Australia and in Spain, obviously, and I'm assuming all over Europe. Do they outline sort of where those creative controls, where the boundaries are? I'm assuming there's some rules that need to take place across all of the whole brand on a whole.
Yeah. So,
is there much communication, from Australia back to Spain and all the other countries involved that sort of outlines where, maybe they have sort of an overarching vision that you then need to play around with?
There is and there isn't. So, I mean, like in terms of how we distribute our product, headquarters distributes through subsidiaries and independents. So we're a subsidiary, so we're wholly owned by headquarters. Whereas some countries like New Zealand, the distribution is done through All City, and that's an independent business. But in terms of how we engage with headquarters, like we do have a sort of base foundation of what the brand's vision is and, creative direction. But at the same time, majority of the vision for that country's distributor is left in the hands of, who's running it. I guess the main reason for that is because each country's got a different dynamic in terms of how they engage with spray paint. So in Europe, for example, like majority of their retailer network, or in terms of, I guess where majority of their product is moved, a lot of it's moved through, your traditional paint stores. So your trade stores, whereas in Australia, it's the other way around, where currently majority of the product is moved through what we can call our traditional graffiti stores. But in Australia, like where the market we want to distribute through more is, the trade and paint stores. So in terms of how we get to that end goal is not so much up to headquarters, because headquarters can't fully fathom each country's niche. A lot of it is just left up. I mean, in the case of Australia, left up to me. So
yeah, that's I guess that's a pretty important role. I mean, you're seeing things like Ironlike get into Officeworks in recent times, and I guess that the potential for growth is in those giant stores like Officeworks and Bunnings and things like that. So,
I mean, it is and it isn't.
Yeah. I feel like just the volume of people moving through would be so massive that you're definitely looking to get some part of your products, into those big chains.
At least from my understanding and in terms of how I understand the current market and how they engage with spray paint, yes, it would be good to put it in these large franchise stores. But I guess with the market that we operate in, since we still effectively operate in a niche market, putting product in those types of stores puts a lot of pressure and potentially kills our customers engaged with our existing local retailers. And a lot of the network we have is, small business. And if you start to engage and distribute through these large chains, then a lot of the time, for example, Officeworks and Bunnings have got systems in place to where they can price match and beat that price match by 10%. And if you start engaging with these retailers, a lot of the time the big turnover you're engaging with your smaller retailers diminishes. And then when you're engaging with these retailers, the price structure you have to offer them is so bloody cheap that you either fully commit to selling your product only in the large retailers, or you keep away from them and you just engage with smaller ones. And it's been good for us in the sense that we've actually found a middle ground to, in the case of Inspirations Paint. They're a large brand across Australia, and they've got a lot of distribution points, but they're not so big that it's going to kill every other retailer that's set in the culture and the industry. So,
interesting. So MTN is stocked in Inspirations Paints.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
For over a year, and it's a growing relationship, which is good. So.
Yeah, I'm just speaking in terms of franchises. Being a painter and decorator, I'm always in Inspiration stores, and great businesses and always really good people put in the right places. And just from a customer's sort of point of view, they're really, it's a really good business to engage with. I find them really helpful. So yeah, that's really good to hear.
They're good.
I guess that kind of, speaking of sort of grassroots businesses and growth, and sometimes bigger isn't always better. I guess now's a good time to sort of speak about the history of Montana or MTN. A lot of people might not know that there is actually two separate companies called Montana. One is Montana Colors, being otherwise known as MTN or Spanish Montana, and the other is Montana Cans, which is associated with Germany. Now, as I said before, there's an interesting story as to why there's the two brands. And having been buying spray paint for 15 years now, I actually sort of intuitively knew that they were two separate paints or two separate companies just from using them, and just the branding is slightly different, but it is really confusing from a customer's point of view, being that they're called the same thing, Montana and Montana. And, when you go on to buy something, you don't really think about it too much. You just buy what you need to buy or whatever. But there is actually two brands, as I said, Montana Colors and Montana Cans. Can you explain why there is two companies, both with the same name of Montana, and sort of what happened in the early 90s and 2000s that gave us those two companies?
Yeah. I'll put a disclaimer out first in the sense that this is my current understanding of it. And I wish I had Geordie on the other end of the call to actually give the full truth. But
that would be amazing. I would love to talk to Geordie one day. That'd be great.
It would be. I think it would be cool to get Geordie on the podcast. But from my current understanding, and at least what I know at the moment, is that MTN is the original. The original in the sense of actually developing a spray can tailored for graffiti, and sort of at least pioneering that industry. And what I currently understand is that when the company first started out in '94, not long down the track, some people left Montana Colors, and they either left or they were associated in some way and started Montana Cans, and that they actually started producing replicas of the original hardcores. And if you look at the old hardcore cans and the cans that Montana Cans was releasing, it's plain as day in the sense that, Montana was replicating our first products in some manner, and then, of course, using that, within the distribution of Germany. And, later down the track, there were legal battles in terms of the ownership of Montana. And that my current understanding is that neither party could obtain the name. I'm assuming just for the reason that Montana's a place. And they couldn't secure the name just because it's a location, I'm assuming. And I think that's what the reason was. Hence why Montana Colors began the, abbreviated version MTN to further distinguish themselves from Montana Cans. Because a lot of the time when somebody thinks of Montana, you're not thinking of the last word in the name. I guess that's where the confusion comes from a lot, because people just say Montana and people think Montana is Montana. And yeah, I mean, we're here now in the sense that there's still confusion. I mean, there's clearly different design languages for both companies, so I find it funny when people do get confused. But yeah, I mean, that's what my current understanding is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you pretty much got everything I've got written down in front of me. Aside from sort of replicating the MTN hardcores, from my understanding, it was actually a deliberate attempt to sort of confuse the clientele in a way, which is, whatever, my opinion, but it doesn't matter. But it seems fairly shady to me.
I'll agree with you in the sense that, yeah, like intentional, replicating to confuse the market and ideally, get that customer base onto the Montana cam side, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I know now because, I certainly would be reaching for the MTNs. Not that I really use the Montana cans, the white range and the black range, and I really haven't been drawn towards those products much in the past. But I think it's good for people to know. I'd be interested to hear if my peers knew that story, because I certainly didn't know a lot of it. Does it play a part in, we mentioned sort of getting creative directive from headquarters. Is it ever discussed, trying to distance yourself from that other brand? Is that part of sort of the ethos, so to speak, of where you want to head in the direction? Does that other company ever come into the picture?
From my understanding of what I've been told, no. I mean, the directors may or may not have more understanding of whether the other brands take influence in what we do. But from what I can see, if anything, we just stay in our own lane and pursue creating new technologies in spray paint, rather than getting into this whole rabbit hole of trying to, fist fight other brands just for the sake of it. So, no, I don't think so. I think we just simply want to pursue the vision that we have, which is to innovate and develop new spray paint technologies that nobody else, to be honest, is going to do. So,
yeah, well said, man. Where do you see yourself and Montana Colors in 5 years, without obviously revealing anything confidential? Where do you hope to be in the next five years?
Maybe to put it simply, I guess, in terms of what I want for Australia and what headquarters wants for Australia. I mean, one, that I'll still be here. But, just to, one, have a bigger warehouse. I mean, one of our current issues is space at the moment. We are looking for new premises, but just due to the nature of our product, it's actually quite difficult to find buildings that can cater for our need. But aside from the point, larger location to where, at that point we've got a large inventory so that, the distribution, that network that we'll have in the future, it's going to be quite large. At the end of 5 years, I would assume, based on the rate at what we're going, we could have over conservatively, 200 plus retailers around Australia. That's conservative. And, to have a strong team that's larger than 4 people, obviously.
So you are looking to grow the team, yeah. That is?
Definitely. And to actually, create a larger, hub in terms of the MTN brand and actually, engage with the market on a different level, which, I don't think any other brand, or at least any other competitor that we have, actually does. So, yeah.
Did you before the pandemic, I guess, do you travel much for your work? Do you visit other states regularly, or is everything sort of done online?
Yeah, prior traveling was a part of the role in the sense of doing visits to existing customers and building that face-to-face relationship, plus, walking in cold to new retailers and trying to seal the deal on the first introduction.
That's good fun.
So it is fun, and it was fun. I'll be able to start doing that soon, hopefully. But yeah, that was part of the role. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to tick off every retailer on our list in terms of going there and meeting them personally. But it will be done. So, but yeah, it is.
And I know, we were speaking over email just briefly, and I sort of mentioned community projects, and you sort of said that, it's not a massive part of the business now. And by all means, I can cut this section out if need be, but is the graffiti culture itself something that interests Montana as a brand? Maybe sponsoring events, is that something you do at the moment, or is it something that you look to do in the future? Maybe sponsoring particular artists or getting involved with sort of boots on the ground level type marketing? Is it worthwhile for the brand to do things like that?
Yeah, definitely. The brand as a whole already does it. But in terms of Australia, just with the team and budget that we have, we can only do so much. We have, and we continue to do so, sponsor events in the capacity that we can. So, we've nearly sponsored 3 or 4 events, like at least major ones, for the past couple of years, each year. And it can, the contact list continues to grow because, a lot of these events were relying on other brands to sponsor them without mentioning names. Unfortunately, those brands can't, support it for various reasons, so they're jumping on board with us, both on a, inventory and customer service level. But ultimately, aside from sponsoring, large events, we do like to engage with smaller projects if they reach out. So, unfortunately, we don't have the time to continually seek these smaller events and actually outreach to them first, other than the other way around. But ultimately, we want to get to a stage to where we can actually facilitate and construct our own events and actually build these events to, inspire and influence the culture we want to bring towards spray paint and, the existing graffiti culture. Instead of just simply handing out stuff, we want to engage with the community and market where they actually feel a part of a family, and then they can actually feel comfortable being associated with using MTN, and if anything just influence the lifestyle of actually using spray paint. So that's the goal for the future, to where we have the budget and resource to where we can facilitate these large events around Australia and create sparks of people doing continuous things. So
yeah, I'm really glad that you made that point, and that you sort of spoke about it that way. It's really good to know that a company that's so legitimized as MTN puts some thought into, as you said, influencing and giving artists a space to engage with the brand and maybe change some perspectives through those events, from the general public as well. I think Sydney could definitely use with, those types of avenues opening up for artists early on in their careers and also established artists too. Because, as you probably know, there's a huge community of graffiti artists, especially in Sydney and down the East Coast and all over Australia. But I think although there is a huge community, there is also a huge space for legitimate brands to come in and sort of lift up that community in a positive way, and on the back of that, grow the business at the same time. So that's really cool to hear. I did want to ask, and I don't know, just after talking to you for 45 minutes or whatever we've been talking, I didn't know, I'm not sure if it's that applicable, but you did mention that the illegal nature of graffiti and sort of the legal nature in your business is kind of in that sweet spot where, you're dealing, as you said, with a culture that it traditionally comes from an illegal standpoint. Do you ever get sort of approached from any government organizations, or is that ever come into your daily work life, or do you never hear about it in terms of, I imagine sometimes some questions get asked: who's buying your paint? Where's it going to? Just the connection between graffiti and the product that you're selling. Does that connection ever sort of make its way to you?
It does, but not as often as what people would assume, potentially.
I imagine having distributors and things like that would clear a lot of that up, yeah. Really.
I mean, we have had calls and conversations with people of the public, finding our cans left at the scene. I mean, if anything, I would encourage everybody take your stuff with you.
For sure.
It's a simple rule. One, environmentally it's good, but at the same time, you don't want to leave evidence anywhere. But when these people do contact us, we can't tell them anything because it's all confidential. And I mean, the way that our products are found, I mean, it's extremely hard to narrow anything down because it could have been a product from bloody 10 years ago. What are we going to do about that? And even if it was a product from yesterday, we still can't do anything about it. So, I mean, we don't really have many people contact us about that, but it has, happened. But I guess, the retailers really cop more of the legal side of things because, I mean, we're predominantly distributing rather than selling direct face-to-face. I mean, we do that, but the, turnover of customers that actually deal with us face-to-face isn't as near as much as what the retailer does. So in terms of how strict the police or whoever they are engage with how it's sold, it's, usually the retailers. So.
Yeah, they cop the brunt of it, I'm sure. And can you tell me quickly about the product lines that Montana has aside from the spray can? I might be wrong, but you've got markers, sort of mop pens and things like that.
Yeah, we've got markers, sketchbooks, accessories such as, cardboard paints, which is probably one of the cooler ones.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're really cool. Yeah.
MTN systems, they're fun. Even a little terracotta brick wall.
Nice.
That you can actually paint, which is cool. But I guess my favorite product line that's not spray paint is probably the apparel. More so our Australian exclusive stuff, which we design and produce locally, which is cool. And a lot of the major distributors around the world do produce their own country-specific apparel.
Okay. As in it's manufactured in Australia?
Yeah, I mean, like the garments are made wherever they're made, but the design and, printing and embroidery processes are all done in Australia. And it's great in the sense that I've got the freedom to direct that vision of apparel and, have the ability to bring that together and sort of give the Australian market a different edge and, engage with the community different, because it's more fun having, Australian merch on your back than, the same shit that's getting shipped everywhere around the world. So, not saying the stuff from headquarters isn't cool, but our shit's cooler.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's cool to have something homegrown, for sure. I'd be more likely to buy something if it had a Australian flavor to it, but still from a reputable brand like Montana Man, definitely.
Yeah.
Are you, by the time the products get to you, are they ready for the market, or do you ever get put in the firing line and get to test out new pens and new products and paints and things like that?
At least for the time that I've worked with the company, it's been, it's a good thing that, headquarters have got their laboratory and technicians that are skilled in what they do. And, they test and finesse the product over there. And, once they've got the foundation done and it's all well and good, it's distributed. So I haven't had any time where they've sent prototypes or anything. So, it's all done and sealed.
Ready to go. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, look, Ben, firstly, I think I want to thank you for your time. And on behalf of the graffiti community, if I can speak for them, I don't know if I can, but, I'd like to show my respect at least for the work that you are doing in conjunction with Montana. You're obviously a really bright guy, and you sound really passionate and like you care about graffiti and spray paint. And that's really good to see, man. It's really inspiring. And, continuing the brand with, as I said before, with an emphasis on connecting with the culture that it comes from is really cool to see. So much respect, man. And I wish you all the best. And again, I can't thank you enough for your time.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate your words. It's been great speaking to you. So thank you.
Why don't you tell the listeners where to find you online?
Yeah, can do. If anybody out there wants to engage with us, we're on Instagram at MTN Australia. Same goes for Facebook, and you can jump on our website as well, which is just mtnaustralia.com.au, and you can find our contact details there, and you'll speak with either myself or our beautiful team. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. I'm just having a look now. A couple of posts ago, you've got a little video of Sid Tapia up there, and Sid was actually the first guest on the Lead Poison podcast.
Yeah, he mentioned that. I was wondering why the Lead Poison sounded so familiar, but then I remembered because Sid, came in one day and he's like, "Oh yeah, I was just on this podcast." Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I actually asked him at some point, I can't remember in our conversation, if he had any connections with spray paint brands, and because I noticed that he did, sort of vaguely associated stuff with Montana and things, and he actually said, "Look, I know some really great people in the spray paint industry, and they're really nice. They've helped me out a lot in the past." And now I know that he was speaking about you, so there's a really good sort of 360 connection there.
Thank you for listening to the Lead Poison Podcast.
Huh?